With a series as extensive and as popular as The Legend of Zelda, you're bound to run into a lot of variance in opinion and a lot of strong opinions. So today, I'm going to detail 5 of my unpopular Zelda opinions. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan here from Game Essays. This channel is all about covering some of my favorite game series, including The Legend of Zelda and Pokemon. So if you like this kind of content, I highly encourage you to like and subscribe. Before I get into my unpopular Zelda opinions, I'd love for you to leave one of your unpopular Zelda opinions in the comments below, because I'd be happy to do a reaction to all of your opinions in a future video. So please make sure to do that. So getting into my first unpopular Zelda opinion, it would be, I like the breakable weapons in Breath of the Wild. I think this was one of the key complaints, aside from maybe not having traditional dungeons in Breath of the Wild, was that weapons broke too easily and it became very annoying and frustrating during combat. But I personally felt like it was pretty well balanced. Maybe I would have slightly tuned it to have a little bit higher durability on the weapons, but for the most part, I thought it was pretty good. The breakable weapons made it so that you were really never comfortably holding on to a lot of these weapons, and you could never really hoard these weapons. So it made for more interesting combat situations where sometimes, maybe fighting a Lionel, you would break so many of your weapons that you would have to be a little bit more innovative and have to think on your feet and make decisions you wouldn't otherwise have made because the weapon system forced you to do that. So I think the breakable weapons, like I said, could be slightly tweaked, but otherwise I thought it was a really, really good system and made it so that you were never comfortable. Sure, when you got the Master Sword, that gave you a little bit more comfort, but obviously that would break and have to recharge for a while. But otherwise, I actually think it was a very good system. My next opinion is that I think Zelda II is a good game. Now, anyone who's seen pretty much all the videos on my channel would know that I have a high opinion of Zelda 2. Is it the best Zelda game? Is it in my top 5? Probably not, but I definitely think I like it better than the average Zelda fan. I did an entire video on what I like about it and how there's a little bit more variety in how you can play the game than most people realize. So I encourage you to check out that video if you really want to get my detailed thoughts. But to summarize, I think it's a fun game. There's some pacing issues. Death Mountain happens a little bit too early, and that's kind of the first, I would say, 2 palaces in Death Mountain is probably where a lot of people give up, because it's really the hardest part of the game, because after that, it's a little bit more smooth sailing if you have the little bit of help of some guides, which I think with NES games, pretty much everyone references a guide from time to time because there's just so much like cryptic stuff in it. But the combat can actually be pretty rewarding and intense, and there's just a lot of fun stuff with, grinding levels if you're into kind of that RPG style, and there's some really cool spells in the game. So I do think there's a lot to love about Zelda 2, and most people just don't want to give it a chance. Has it aged the greatest? Definitely not, but I think there's more to the game than most people realize. My next unpopular opinion is that I like the water temple in Ocarina of Time. Yes, there's a couple of keys that a lot of people miss, and it caused a lot of frustration because if you're missing just one key, there's some hallways where you can go room to room and get pretty far and then realize you are stuck and you don't have a key. So there's a lot of backtracking in that instance. And pausing the game in the N64 version to equip the iron boots on and off can be really annoying and does mess with the pace of the game. But when you play Ocarina of Time 3D, or even just going back when you know what to do in the N64 version, it really is the most interesting and fun to play dungeon in the entire game. It's the most challenging. It's the one where I have to really make sure and be thinking at all times, what I'm doing, where I'm going, how I should be raising the water levels. It presents the most challenge and ends up being the most fun. On top of that, you have Dark Link, which is one of the coolest mini boss fights in the entire game, and maybe in the entire series. It's definitely up there as one of the coolest. Yes, the final boss, Morpha, is definitely a disappointment, but other than that, I think the Water Temple is just a straight up great dungeon and one of the best in the entire like variants of the 3D games. My next unpopular opinion is that the release of the official Zelda Timeline was a mistake. In 2011, with the release of Skyward Sword, we also got Hyrule Historia, which acted as the go-to official Zelda Timeline. We did get a little bit of some minor changes and updates in the Hyrule Encyclopedia, but for the most part, what we got, that's pretty much what we've been with the 3 splits with the downfall, adult, and child timelines for The Legend of Zelda. That's what we've been referencing for the past 10 years. Now, does it give a little bit more clarity, and is it pretty close to being without its issues? Yes, it's probably one of the better interpretations I've seen of the Zelda timeline, but I do think it really hurt a thriving community at the time. Back in, around 2009 to 2011, up until Hyrule Historia came out, there was so much fun to be had with just trying to piece all the games together, and we never really got to do that with the release of Skyward Sword. Now, Skyward Sword obviously fits as the first game, and I think, with the developers' comments saying it was the first game even before we really were looking at Hyrule Historia, that wouldn't have been difficult to piece together, but how we would have interpreted the rest of the timeline after Hyrule Historia, we never really, how we would have been able to interpret the rest of the timeline with Skyward Sword coming out, we never really got a chance to do that, nor could we do that with A Link Between Worlds or even Triforce Heroes and Breath of the Wild, of course. So, I do miss that kind of thriving community. Now it's just kind of like people throw a theory here and there, but it's just not the same as it was before Hyrule Historia. It killed off like a whole segment of the fan base. Like it killed off a whole section of like theorizing and things like that. And it's kind of sad because that was a lot of fun and nobody had the best solution. Now everyone just kind of defaults to the timeline that we were given, as imperfect as it can be at times. So that's definitely something I wish, it's something at the time I wanted, but it's kind of like, it was a be careful what you wish for situation, because now it's just not as fun as it used to be with the whole theories and everything. My final unpopular opinion for this video is I just don't find Link's Awakening to be that fun of a game. I know it's a very beloved game to many, and I have not played the Switch re-release, or remake, I should say. So, maybe jury's out when I do play that, because I do plan to play that in the very near future. But I've played through the Game Boy Color version all the way through twice, and it just doesn't do it for me. I think the story is great and very interesting with the whole nightmare situation, and Link waking up the Windfish kind of means that this whole world that he has grown to appreciate goes away. That's great. When it comes to actually playing the game, there's just times where I feel lost, and going through the overworld can be really annoying. And I know the Switch version definitely cleans up a few things, like having to swap in and out with all the items. You're just pausing the game all the time, and the dungeons are very daunting and some of the most difficult in the entire series, in my opinion. Things like the Eagle Tower feel like a chore to get through, and I find myself always having to go to guides, and reading through a guide just to get through the game is just not my idea of a fun game. So it's one of those games where everyone talks about how great it is and how they beat this game as a kid, and I'm like, as an adult, I find this game to be very difficult and challenging, and it's hard for me to find myself enjoying it a lot of the times. Now, like I said, I understand and I try to appreciate the great aspects from it, but just when it comes down to playing it, I just don't always find myself having that fun of a time. So those are my 5 unpopular opinions. I'd definitely be open to doing a part 2. And like I said, please leave a comment on this video, because I would love to react to your unpopular opinions and find out, hey, do I agree with them? Do I disagree with them? Give my rationale to either of those situations to your comment. So please make sure to do so. And if you enjoyed this video, also make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.